There is one number most people see at every medical visit. It appears on the screen, gets written down, and then the visit moves on. Usually, it only gets a few seconds of attention, and in those few seconds, a lot is quietly missed. Many older adults are told their blood pressure is fine, or about where we expect. No one slows down to explain what those numbers might be reflecting over time. No one shows how patterns matter more than a single reading. Over the years, many people notice changes that seem unrelated at first. Moments of mental fog that weren't there before, a sense of balance, feeling less steady, needing more help with daily tasks than expected. Often, these shifts don't come from one dramatic illness. They build slowly, while everyday signals go unexplained. Blood pressure is one of those signals, not as a diagnosis and not as a reason for fear, but as a form of information. When read carefully, it can reflect how the body is adapting with age. Many people recall leaving appointments without really understanding their numbers. The cuff comes off, the conversation changes, and life continues. That experience is very common. What matters here is learning how to notice what tends to be overlooked. Small details that don't stand out in a quick check. Patterns that only become clear when someone takes a closer look. If you choose to stay with this video, you'll be guided through those details calmly and clearly. Near the end, there's one simple check that many people have never been shown. It takes very little time, yet it can offer useful insight. Most people grow up thinking blood pressure works like a switch. Either it is okay or it is not okay. That idea is understandable. Two numbers appear on the screen, and the focus goes straight to whether one of them is too high. But those two numbers are not a verdict. They are closer to a snapshot taken during a very small moment in time. When blood pressure is measured, what's being captured is how the body is responding right then, how it adapts to movement, rest, stress, and age. That response leaves patterns, not just readings. Many older adults check blood pressure at home with care and consistency. The cuff goes on, the number is written down, and the notebook closes. The routine feels responsible, yet the meaning often stays unclear. What's usually missed is that each reading contains layers of information. The relationship between the two numbers, how they behave from one day to the next, whether they stay steady or drift apart over time. The device itself is rarely the problem. Most home monitors do their job well enough for everyday use. The gap appears when the numbers are treated as isolated facts instead of part of a story. For someone in their 60s or 70s, this matters more than it did earlier in life. The body becomes more sensitive to subtle changes. Small shifts can show up quietly, long before anything feels obviously wrong. This is why simply recording numbers without understanding them can feel unsatisfying. There is effort, but little clarity. Many people sense that something is missing, even if they can't name it. What helps is learning how to read blood pressure as a set of signals rather than a pass or fail test. Signals that have been present all along in everyday measurements. There is one detail hidden in every blood pressure reading that many people have never been shown how to notice. It doesn't require a new test, a different device, or special training. It simply involves looking at the two numbers together instead of separately. Most people glance at the top number first. If it seems acceptable, the moment passes. The lower number gets even less attention. What often goes unnoticed is the space between them. That space is called pulse pressure. It is found by subtracting the lower number from the upper one. For many years, this gap stays fairly steady. Then, slowly, it can begin to widen, so gradually that nothing feels different day to day. There are many older adults who remain active, independent, and fully engaged with life while this change is happening. They walk, travel, work in their garages, tend gardens, and feel much like themselves. No obvious signals appear to demand attention. One man, in his early 70s, kept a consistent routine. Morning walks, small projects at home, regular checkups. His blood pressure readings were always written down, and no one seemed concerned. Over time, the top number edged upward, while the bottom number drifted lower. Each change felt small on its own. Together, they created a growing gap that no one discussed. This is where perspective matters. A widening gap is not simply about the top number being a little higher than before. It reflects how the body has been adapting internally over many years. As tissues change with age, flexibility and responsiveness do not always move at the same pace they once did. The numbers begin to separate quietly, without discomfort or warning. Many people feel fine while this is happening. For someone measuring at home, this is easy to overlook. The habit is to record the reading and move on with the day. Rarely does anyone pause to do the simple subtraction. When people first notice this detail, there's often a moment of recognition, not alarm, just awareness, a sense that there is more information here than they realized. This gap doesn't announce itself loudly, it simply grows, reading by reading, waiting to be noticed. There is a belief many people carry for years that the lower number should always be pushed down as far as possible. For a long time, that idea feels reassuring. Each visit ends with a nod of approval. The reading looks neat, controlled, and familiar. This is especially common among older adults who have taken blood pressure medication for many years. Adjustments happen slowly. Doses change a little at a time, often without much discussion. The lower number drifts downward. At first, it feels like progress. Nothing hurts, nothing feels wrong. One woman in her mid-70s followed this path carefully. She read every label, never missed a dose, and kept her appointments. Her readings looked better each year on paper. She stayed busy, reading to grandchildren, tending flowers, keeping her routines intact. There was no obvious signal asking for attention. What she didn't realize was that very low readings can sometimes change how the body feels long before anything dramatic happens. Energy becomes less predictable. Recovery after small efforts feels slower, though it's easy to explain away as age. Many people in this situation feel proud of those numbers. They share them with family, they write them down with confidence. The shift often goes unnoticed because it doesn't announce itself clearly. There is no single moment that feels like a warning, just a quiet adjustment that settles in. Then, one ordinary day, something feels different. Not gradually, but all at once. The contrast between feeling fine and suddenly not feeling fine can be startling. This is why the lower number deserves as much attention as the upper one, not as something to fear, but as something to understand. Balance matters more than extremes. For many older adults, this perspective comes as a surprise. They were never told there could be another side to a good number. The idea simply never came up. There is a situation many older adults recognize right away. For years, blood pressure feels predictable. The same routine, the same medication, and numbers that stay within a familiar range. Life moves on with a quiet sense of stability. Appointments feel routine rather than urgent. Nothing suggests the body is struggling to adapt. Then, over a few months, something changes. Readings begin to climb little by little. Not dramatically at first, just enough to be noticed. The dose is adjusted. For a short time, the numbers seem to settle. Soon after, they rise again. Another adjustment follows, then another, and still, the pattern doesn't return to what it once was. Many people assume this means the medication is no longer strong enough, that the body simply needs more support as time goes on. That explanation feels reasonable, and it's often accepted without much pause. What is easy to miss is how different this feels from a slow, gradual shift over many years. This change arrives in a relatively short window. Weeks turn into months, and the trend keeps pointing upward. For someone living day to day, this can feel confusing rather than alarming. There may be no clear discomfort, just a growing sense that the numbers are no longer listening. This is often a moment when the body is signaling that something beneath the surface needs attention, not as a diagnosis, not as a conclusion, simply as information. When blood pressure that was once steady becomes difficult to guide back into place, it deserves curiosity rather than frustration. The pattern itself matters more than any single reading. The timing matters more than the exact number. Many older adults, looking back, can point to a season when this happened. A few months that felt off in subtle ways. Sleep felt different. Energy felt uneven. Recovery felt slower. Those details are easy to brush aside when life is busy, yet they often travel alongside these shifts quietly. Recognizing this pattern early can change how the situation is approached. Instead of only adjusting the surface, attention turns toward understanding why the body stopped responding the way it used to. There is a part of the day most people never think about when it comes to blood pressure. It happens quietly, while the house is dark and the body is meant to rest. At night, everything is supposed to slow down. Breathing becomes deeper. Muscles soften. The body takes a pause from the effort of the day. For many people, blood pressure follows that rhythm. It eases slightly during sleep, then rises again in the morning. This gentle dip is part of how the body recovers. But for some older adults, that pause never fully arrives. The numbers stay close to daytime levels. Sometimes they even drift higher while sleeping. This often goes unnoticed because no one is measuring at that hour. Daytime readings can look completely ordinary. Morning and evening checks feel reassuring. Yet daily life starts to feel off in subtle ways. Waking up tired despite enough hours in bed. Feeling worn down before the day really begins. Nighttime trips to the bathroom become more frequent. Sleep feels light and unrefreshing. The morning brings heaviness instead of clarity. Many people accept these changes as part of getting older. They adjust routines, drink less water at night, go to bed earlier. The assumption is that nothing more is happening. What's easy to miss is the pattern connecting these experiences. The body may be staying in a state of effort when it should be resting. The night, instead of being a reset, becomes another stretch of quiet strain. For someone who tracks blood pressure only during waking hours, this remains hidden. The daytime numbers don't tell the whole story. The missing piece lives in the hours no one is watching. When people first learn that blood pressure has a nighttime rhythm, it often reframes familiar experiences, not as a problem to panic over, just as information that adds context. Noticing how mornings feel can be as revealing as any number. Energy on waking, clarity of thought, the sense of being restored or not, these are often the first hints that the night deserves attention too. Blood pressure is meant to move. It rises with activity and settles with rest. That gentle rhythm is part of normal daily life. After a walk, numbers may be higher. After sitting quietly, they tend to ease. This kind of change feels smooth and predictable. What's different is when the pattern becomes uneven. One reading feels calm and steady. The next, taken not long after, looks surprisingly far away. Some older adults notice this first in their notebooks. The log fills with numbers that don't seem to belong to the same person. Low one day, high the next, without a clear reason. One man in his 70s tracked everything carefully. Same chair, same time, same routine each day. The device was consistent, but the readings were not. At first, he treated each number on its own. A good one brought relief. A higher one was quickly forgotten once it passed. Over time, other changes appeared quietly. Misplacing familiar items, losing a thought mid-sentence, then brushing it off. Nothing felt dramatic. Just a sense that focus came and went more easily than before. Friends noticed it before he did. What often gets overlooked is that stability matters as much as the average, not how high or low a number lands once, but how smoothly it moves across days and weeks. When blood pressure swings sharply, the body works harder to adjust. Those adjustments happen repeatedly, sometimes many times a day. The effort is subtle, but it adds up. Many people never look back across their records. They react to each reading in isolation. The broader pattern stays hidden in plain sight. This is where a shift in perspective can feel revealing. Seeing the numbers as a sequence, not snapshots. Noticing whether the body's responses feel coordinated or scattered. For older adults, this awareness can change how everyday moments are interpreted. Fatigue after a simple task, mental clarity that feels inconsistent from one morning to the next. Those experiences often line up with the rhythm behind the numbers. Not loudly, just steadily, over time. There is a habit many people follow for years without thinking twice. They choose one arm, usually the same one, every single time they measure. It feels practical and familiar. The routine becomes automatic. The numbers look consistent, and that consistency feels reassuring. What often gets overlooked is that the body is not perfectly symmetrical in how it responds. Each arm reflects blood flow through a slightly different path. Most of the time, those paths behave in a similar way. Sometimes, though, they don't. A woman in her early 70s had been checking her blood pressure faithfully at home for a decade. Same chair, same time, same arm. Her readings looked steady, and she felt well. She stayed active, enjoyed her mornings, and noticed nothing unusual in daily life. No pain, no warning signs she could feel. At a routine appointment, her pressure was checked on both sides for the first time in years. The numbers didn't match the way anyone expected. One arm told a very different story than the other. What made this surprising was how ordinary everything had felt up to that moment. There had been no signal strong enough to interrupt her routine. Life had carried on without friction. This is why comparing both arms can matter, not as a reason for fear, but as a way to notice imbalance that doesn't announce itself. A difference that persists can point to changes happening quietly over time. Many people assume that if one arm looks normal, the picture is complete. They never think to check the other side. Years can pass that way. For older adults especially, small asymmetries can carry useful information. The body often adapts unevenly as time goes on. Those differences tend to appear before discomfort does. When people hear about this, there's often a simple realization, not worry, just curiosity, a sense that one more piece of the picture has been missing. Taking a moment to notice both sides adds context to everything else being tracked. It doesn't replace care or guidance. It simply widens the view. When all of these pieces are placed side by side, a different picture begins to appear. Not 6 separate concerns, but one ongoing pattern. Each reading becomes less isolated. The space between numbers, how low one side drifts, what happens when control suddenly feels harder to maintain. Then there is the rhythm across days and nights. Moments when the body should be resting but doesn't quite settle. Fluctuations that feel scattered rather than smooth. Even the comparison between arms fits into that same picture, not as a single test result, but as another angle on how evenly the body is adapting. Seen this way, blood pressure stops being a scorecard. It becomes a record of how the body responds to time, stress, rest, and change. A pattern that unfolds gradually. For many older adults, this shift in perspective feels grounding. Nothing new needs to be purchased. No special equipment is required. The information has already been there, collected quietly over months or years. What changes is the way it is read, from individual numbers to relationships between them. This kind of awareness can feel empowering without being overwhelming. It allows people to notice trends early, to stay engaged with their own health in a calm, informed way. Blood pressure, when viewed as a whole, offers context rather than judgment. It reflects adaptation, not just control. And that broader view can support a sense of steadiness as life continues to evolve. This is where everyday habits begin to matter. Nothing complicated, just a steadier way of paying attention. At home, measuring works best when it feels calm and familiar. The same chair, a few quiet minutes, feet resting on the floor. Let the body settle before pressing the button. Writing the numbers down helps more than relying on memory. A simple notebook or a note on the phone is enough. What matters is seeing how readings relate to each other over time. Some people find it useful to notice the moment of day as well, morning, evening, or after rest. Those details often add context without adding effort. Checking both arms from time to time widens the picture. Not every day, just often enough to notice consistency. It becomes another reference point, not another task. When looking back at the notes, the goal isn't perfection. It's familiarity, recognizing what feels typical and what feels different. Bringing these observations to an appointment can change the conversation. Instead of focusing on a single number, there is a pattern to look at together. Questions come from curiosity rather than concern. Many older adults discover that this approach feels manageable. It fits into daily life without taking it over. A small habit that supports awareness. Taking part in this process keeps the experience grounded. The body offers information quietly. Noticing it simply becomes part of staying engaged. All along, these numbers have been appearing quietly, at home, at appointments, in moments that once felt routine. Blood pressure doesn't raise its voice. It speaks in patterns, in spacing, in timing, day by day. It reflects how the body is adapting to life as it is now. For many people, nothing here feels dramatic. It feels familiar, almost ordinary. And that's the point. These signals are part of everyday life, not something separate from it. They don't demand fear, only attention. Listening doesn't require expertise. It begins with noticing, with being willing to look a little more closely at what's already there. Some people choose to share this perspective with a partner, a friend, or a family member. Others carry it into their next appointment and let the conversation unfold differently. Both are quiet ways of staying engaged. If learning to understand the body in a calmer, more informed way feels helpful, you're welcome to stay here. This space is meant for steady understanding, not urgency. Thank you for spending this time noticing. It's one way many people support independence and quality of life as the years continue.